Hello, everybody. Happy Marvelous Monday. I hope that you all are well. Can you hear me okay? Let me do a sound check. How's my sound? Can you hear me okay? All right, we are going to have a much needed conversation today. Um, I have had the opportunity to, I don't know if it's good or bad, but I've had the opportunity to speak to some of my colleagues who are landlords. And they are considering making it a requirement for their tenants to become vaccinated. So, if you are a landlord or if you are a tenant, this Facebook, YouTube Live is for you. If you know someone who is, please share this information today that I'm going to give you. All right. This is real time, all the way live, hot off the press. Landlords are starting to require that tenants become vaccinated. And so, what does that mean? Is that legal? Can they do that? I'm going to answer all of those questions today. But before I get into the discussion, let me just give an introduction. I'm Karissa Spann, the landlord and tenant coach, also known as the landlord and tenant expert. This is what I do each and every Monday. I share information to help landlords as well as tenants. So if you're tuned in on my Facebook page, please make sure that you find me on YouTube. Go ahead and smash that subscribe button so that you'll be the first to know when I am live and online. I want to say thank you to my students, as I see my students are starting to join the discussion today. And I promise that the information that I share today will be helpful for so many viewers who are either landlords and or tenants. Okay, so like it, tag somebody, and share this information. Why? Because sharing is caring. I promise I won't hold you long. But again, this is what I do each and every Monday. So I typically go until about maybe 8 o'clock p.m. I am going to answer questions that you have today, all right, pertaining to this subject matter, how landlords are starting to require that tenants become vaccinated. Before I get into the discussion today, I want to acknowledge some people who are here. If this is your first time tuning in, if this is your first time watching, please let me know where you're watching from. All right, say, hey, girl, hey, let me know that you're here. Hey, Pete, happy Marvelous Monday. All right, thank you for the sound check. Hello, D. Thank you, sis. I love your entire life. Sending you hugs and kisses. Thank you for tuning in today. Pete, true story. Yes, it is ridiculous. Could be. But Pete, I'm interested to find out your position on what makes it ridiculous. Are you saying that for landlords to require it is ridiculous? Let me know your feedback. All right, so I'm going to get into the discussion today. This is an interactive type of segment. So if you have questions, if you have comments, go ahead and drop it in the comment section. All right, so Pete, I see your comment. You said, okay, all right. So true story. Landlords are now making it a requirement for tenants to be vaccinated. And I understand. Here's why I do understand. So I'm kind of 50-50 on this. I'm going to tell you why. I've been in the housing industry and property management and real estate for well over 28 years. Okay. And I also recognize that with this COVID virus that's been going around, I mean, listen, we have been impacted by COVID one way, one shape, form, or another for a couple of years now, right? So with that being said, we definitely want to make sure that not just us, not just people who are connected to us are safe, but we want to make sure that everybody is safe, right? And as a housing provider, I can understand on one hand how some landlords want to make it a requirement just to make sure that everybody is safe, right? But then also I can understand that from a tenant's perspective, that they don't want to be required to take the vaccine. So the question that I received today, I received a couple of emails about it, had some conversation about it. People want to know, can landlords do this? Is this something that they can get away with? Can they make it a requirement? And so I'm going to get into the discussion, but let me know your feedback. What are your thoughts on this matter? Do you think that landlords can require tenants to get vaccinated? I want to know your input before I get into the meat of the discussion today. Hey, Emily, thank you so much for tuning in today, beautiful. All right, you said, I must admit, that would be a violation to mandate a tenant to have a vaccine. Okay, thank you for that feedback, Emily. Anybody else? Anybody else? I want you all to chime in. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think that landlords can make it a requirement? Yes or no? Put it in the chat box. Let me see your input. All right, where are my YouTube viewers? What is your input? I want to know your feedback. What are your thoughts on the matter? And then I'm going to share some information today that just may surprise you. All right, but let me hear your feedback before I get into the discussion. Do you think that landlords can make it a requirement? All right, so we acknowledge some more viewers who are tuned in. I want to say thank you, Kimberly Parker from South Carolina. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you're watching the replay, thank you for watching the replay. Please make sure that you are sharing this information if you find it helpful and if you find value in what I'm talking about sharing today. So let me see your comments. What are you saying here? Kim, you said you think it should be a choice. Okay. There are some people who believe that, you know what, it should be a choice either way. It shouldn't be a requirement either way. And then some of us do believe it should be a requirement. Here's a you have been impacted, whether it's directly or indirectly with having COVID-19. Maybe you've been hospitalized. Maybe you know someone who has been, or maybe someone who passed away from this COVID-19. Sometimes in those situations, and especially when it hits home, your input is a little different, right? So I'm going to get into the discussion. Pete, let me see your comment. You said in Baltimore, there people are still getting COVID even after the booster. I'm not taking any shots, and I'm not making anyone else take it unless they want to. It's their prerogative. Get it, and I completely understand that, Pete. So let me just share some information today. All right. So we're talking about landlords making it a requirement. Can they make it a requirement? Is it against the law? Let's start there. So here's what I do want to share. Okay. November 2021, a new COVID virus was reported to World Health Organization, right? And so CDC expects that anyone with this new virus, with the new infection, they can spread the virus to others, even if they are vaccinated and don't have symptoms. So Pete, you said that people are vaccinated, people get the booster shot, and they are still getting it. Now, here's the thing, when it comes to rental property, many of you who have been following me, you know this, you know my philosophy. It is very clear. If you treat it like a business, what will happen? Pete, I know you know it. Kim, I know you know it. If you treat it like a business, what will happen if you treat it like a business? Let me hear your comment. Rather. Type it in the chat box for me. If you treat it like a business, what will happen? Because I believe that a lot of people are making a very big mistake by not understanding that owning rent property, it is a business. And so it's one property, multiple property. You can have 10 properties, 20, hundreds, thousands of properties. It is very possible for you to not understand what you should be doing. Hello, Tawana. Thank you so much for this. I do appreciate you. You said, no, you can't make people do it. Okay. Kim, you're responding to the fill in the blank. If you treat it like a business, it will pay you like a business. Absolutely. And if you treat it like a hobby, it will pay you like a hobby. So Pete, you said, I know this hits home for me. So it's understandable that you may stand on a different view. All right. So here is what I'm going to share. So November, just last month, 2021, this new virus has hit this world, and people are like, oh my God, it was already bad enough. We start to see increase in numbers. A lot of jurisdictions and states, they started to open up. They started to lift the mask mandate. And so now here it is with this new virus. Things are now starting to shut back down. And I don't know where you're watching from, but I know in my particular area that schools are now starting to go back virtual learning, and places are starting and beginning to shut down again. And so we have to take this thing very seriously. All right, here's the thing. Landlords, they are faced with the overwhelming challenges of providing safe, COVID-free living space and being sensitive to the resistance that some tenants feel to getting the vaccine. However, landlords are still making it a requirement in certain areas. Although a lot of people they have lost their lives, and a lot of landlords are skeptical, about whether they should, whether they shouldn't, whether they can or whether they can't. Here's what I do believe. A lot of data is still floating out there. There's this unknown. There's so many unknown variables about this new virus, this new infection. And so while people are still fully vaccinated, they can still get severely sick. And but one thing that I come to understand is this, and I've been vaccinated, Pete. I don't have the booster, but I do have the first and the second. And Pete, like you said, people who have been vaccinated, they are still catching COVID. There's nothing stopping us from getting COVID. But here's the thing: when you have the booster, when you have been vaccinated, it minimizes your chance of getting so sick to the point of death. So I just wanted to state that. But there are so many other variables, and there's a lot of data floating around that they don't have all of the answers, right? So this new virus, it's worse than all of the others. And so the question is today, can landlords legally require tenants to get the COVID-19 vaccine? All right. And so I have seen, pretty much from what I've seen in the comment box, many of you are saying that it is not a requirement. Landlords cannot require it. Well, here's the answer. Ready? Drum roll. All right. This is the answer here. Like so many legal questions, the answer to this one is it depends. It really just depends. So the answer is not a definite yes, but it's not a definite no. It could be just depending on a couple of things. So there are a couple of things here, but the two most important are this. The first is that it's important for landlords to understand in this moment, right now, what's in the lease. And the second thing is it the law? Some jurisdictions, they are now starting to implement laws where landlords can, in fact, and actually make it a requirement for tenants to get the vaccine. But here's the thing. This vaccine mandate, right? It's going to be so different from one jurisdiction to the next. So it just depends on where the rental property is. And this is why I commonly say, look at what's in writing, what's in the lease, and know what the laws are in your particular jurisdiction. So from one area to the next, the laws are going to be different. Things are not going to be the same everywhere. So know what the law says. Follow CDC guidelines. Understand the laws that are now being implemented. Okay, so for instance, if you are a landlord in a jurisdiction where you are able to make it a requirement and you put it in your lease, you put it in writing, and it becomes a legally binding document or contract that's signed between you and your tenant, you then can make it a requirement for your tenants to get the vaccine. I'm going to pause on that moment. I'm pausing because I want you to think about what I just said. Depending on the jurisdiction, if it's in writing and if it is permissible by law, landlords can, in fact, make it a requirement for tenants to get the COVID-19 vaccinations. True story. I can't make this up. I'm sharing information hot off the press. All right, so I have some tips today for landlords. All right, I have some tips for tenants as well. But here are my landlord tips. First and foremost, here's what I want people to understand. If you are a housing provider or a landlord, here's what I want you to know. Vaccines must be included in the rental lease agreement. Make sure that it is in writing, because a lot of people make the mistake by trying to implement something that does not exist. If it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. Now, I know a lot of old school folk, pretty much like my father, may he rest in peace. My father was 94, but he was old school. Now, back in the era where he grew up in a long, long time ago, right? People gave their word, and their word was their contract. But here's what I do know about business. As a businesswoman, it's not what I know, it's what I can prove. And so I usually will have it in writing. What's in writing? Is it in the lease? So if you are a landlord in a jurisdiction and you are able to make it a requirement, make sure that it's part of your rental lease agreement. And there is nothing that can, and if the tenant agrees to it and that's what they signed, then they are bound by the terms of that contract. Now, there are some exceptions to that rule. Here's tip number 2 for my landlords. The second is this. So before considering a vaccine requirement or mandate, make sure that you check your city, your state laws to know when it is prohibited. Okay. Some states have, in fact, passed laws that makes discrimination if you're violating the law, you can get in trouble for it. So make sure that you understand it. Don't just think that, oh, well, Karissa said that we could do it. Listen, understand what the laws are in your particular jurisdiction. So I have viewers who are tuned in from Baltimore. I have viewers who are tuned in from South Carolina. I have viewers who are tuned in from New York and Virginia, South Carolina, New York, Atlanta, right? And so from one state, from one jurisdiction to the next, the laws are going to be different. Things are not going to be the same for everybody. All right. So please make sure that you understand what you can and cannot do. All right. And when you are implementing a vaccine requirement, ensure that it does not violate fair housing laws. So you have to be knowledgeable of fair housing laws. Okay. You can get more information about fair housing laws on HUD's website, HUD.gov. You can go to HUD's website, get more information about fair housing laws. Previously, I shared information about fair housing laws and what that's like. All right, so let me go to my chat box, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to share some more information for landlords, and then I'm going to get into information for tenants. Hello, and good evening. Donald Isaac, thank you so much for tuning in. You said great information, great show. Thank you. I'm excited that you are joining me today, Reverend Isaac. Hello, Ms. Davis. Thank you so much for tuning in, beautiful. So I'm sharing information because sharing is caring, and true story, landlords are now making it a requirement in certain jurisdictions. Okay, so I talked about fair housing laws, right? So let me give an example. I'm going to pull up on the screen an example of what a fair housing complaint could look like. Okay. All right. So here it is. The vaccination status is not a protected factor under the Fair Housing Act. Kim, I know that you know this because I know that you are in the industry. We talked about fair housing laws. We talked about the protected classes. Well, here's the thing. Fair housing laws does not have a particular class that covers the vaccination. However, landlords can still violate fair housing laws based off of what? Does anybody know what? How could a landlord violate the fair housing law, although the vaccination or vaccines requirement, it's not a protected class? Anybody? Some of you who are landlords, some of you who are students who have taken fair housing laws, the fair housing class, you know the Fair Housing Act. Let me see your input. Kimberly, you said yes. All right. So here's the thing. All right. Here is an example. All right. So if an applicant is rejected because of their vaccination status, all right, and is not vaccinated because of an underlying health condition. For example, someone who has the autoimmune disease, this could be a result of this. There could be a lawsuit based off of this because of what protected class? Anybody? Because people don't really understand how easy it is to get yourself in a situation and you can end up getting a lawsuit slapped against you because of what you don't know. Now, here it is. In certain jurisdictions, let me just go here. In certain jurisdictions, right, landlords are permitted to make it a requirement for tenants to get the vaccine. Okay. However, in that jurisdiction, if the tenant is not vaccinated because they have some sort of health issue, and the landlord make it a requirement to say, oh, well, I don't care if you have a health issue. It's a requirement if you want to live in our rental property. In that case and in that situation, right, that would be a violation of fair housing laws. Okay, so I wanted to share that information. All right, so here's the third thing. Here's what I want landlords to consider, especially in those jurisdictions. Consider specific reasons why a vaccine mandate is necessary for your property. Why, in other words, why are you making a requirement? I mean, yes, in some places you could, but why? So I want landlords to really think about that. All right, so let me share some tips for landlords. And if you have questions or comments, go ahead and drop it in the comment section. I think I have a text that came in, so give me one moment. I do answer questions that are in the chat box that come in by way of email and text messages. All right, so here are tips for tenants. If you are watching, if you are a tenant or you know someone who is a tenant in a jurisdiction, or you have a landlord that say, well, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, we appreciate you living in our rental property or our rental community. However, it is mandatory that you get vaccinated. It is mandatory that you show us that you've been vaccinated, meaning that you have your vaccination card, you have an email or something to verify that you've been vaccinated. Here's what I want tenants to know and understand. Make sure that it is in the lease. And I don't care if they're in jurisdiction and the law says that they could. It must be in writing. Make sure it's in your lease. A lot of tenants don't recognize and understand that they do have rights. And sometimes, and I get it, I'm a housing provider. I manage property for well over 28 years. So I'm not new to this, right? I get it. I have heard so many horror stories where tenants are complaining. They'll reach out to me. My inbox is flooded. My emails are flooded from tenants who are saying, my landlord, they're trying to make do such and such, but it's not in the lease. And that's the one thing that I'll always ask. Is it in writing? Did you sign a lease agreeing to what your landlord is asking you about? If you are a new tenant, you just recently moved in during this whole pandemic, the state of emergency that many of us have been in many states around the United States, right? If you have signed a lease agreeing to it, whether you were knowledgeable about what you signed or not, you are bound by the terms of the rental lease agreement, unless you have some sort of health issue and maybe you can't get the vaccine because it will compromise your health. There are, like I said, there are exceptions to the rule. So please look over your lease, look it over fully, review it, and understand all the conditions that you agree to. All right. Second tip for tenants, make sure and confirm that it is by law allowable. Okay. Just because it's in writing. All right. It could be in the lease. Right. And I know that sometimes tenants don't really fully read the lease. Many of you, you've been watching me, you understand and know because I've shared this endless times. My lease package, I promise, true story. My lease is at least how many pages long? Somebody who's been watching, please tell me. Share with others how many pages my lease is. I want to see how many people have been following me. You remember the information that I shared before I go on. Oh, Tanika, thank you so much for tuning in, beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so my lease is True story. Pete, thank you for answering this. My lease is at least 61 pages long. Now, do I believe that tenants take the time to read all 61 pages of that rent lease agreement? Absolutely not. But here's what I do know. I know that because I am an educator, I teach property management, right? This is what I do for a living. I manage property. I teach college level property management. I train and I coach landlord one-on-one as well as group coaching. So I am not new to this. I'm true to this, but I do understand that sometimes landlords, one, don't know what's in the lease, right? They don't really fully understand. Let me retract that statement. Some landlords or housing providers have not fully and understand all of the terms of their rental lease agreement. And sometimes tenants will go ahead and sign a lease before they understand what's in writing. Hey, Sandy, thank you so much for tuning in. You said my lease package is 37 pages. Kim, you said my lease package is 19 pages. My lease is at least 61 pages long. True story. And some people may say, well, Karissa, that's a little obsessive. I promise you that if you treat it like a business, it will pay you like a business. I leave no room for error. It's clear what the responsibilities are of the tenant, as well as the tenant understanding what my roles and responsibilities are. They know what they can expect out of me, and I just believe in sharing information. Pete, you said, do you have that in audio form? You know what, Pete, I'm working on that. Hello, Pastor Moore. Thank you so much for tuning in, beautiful. Pete, I am actually working on, Pete, you know, I'm always working on something, you know, cutting edge. And so here's the thing, Pete, true story. I'm currently working on video orientations for new move-ins. So my tenants will have a video explaining. They will see my face on the screen. I will explain the lease, explain their expectations, what they can expect out of me. They will understand the rules and the regulations of that rental community. I promise you, when you document it, I promise you, it leaves no room for error. Okay, so let me get into some more of the comments, and then I am going to go to my third and final tip for tenants. Hey, Christina, thank you so much for tuning in. You said, no, I'm a tenant, and I made a mistake recently not reading all of my documents and discovered your lease stated you, let's see, I was in a bedroom size I actually was not in. So please pay attention. I made a mistake by just reading certain parts of the lease. True story. She's a tenant. She said she signed the lease. She didn't read it over. And so because she signed it, she agreed to it. She didn't read all of the terms. And now, because she is in this contract, unless this landlord releases her or allow her to come out of it, she is bound by the terms of that rental lease agreement. And so this is why I share information that I do, because I recognize that a lot of people are not aware. And when you sign that lease, there is nothing, unless it's against the law, there is nothing that says that that landlord must excuse you out of that contract. It is a contract. Sandy, you're asking if I can share a copy of my lease. Absolutely. Sandy, I'm going to ask that you do this. I see that you're tuning in from YouTube. If you received an email from me, Sandy, please email me. I want to make sure I get you that lease. Absolutely. I'll send that to you today. Pete, you said you'll download that for 99 cents. Pete, I promise you, you will not download anything of mine 99 cents. Don't you play me cheap, Pete. Don't do that to me. All right. Kimberly, you said I am not mad at it. I promise you, if you treat it like a business, it will pay you like a business. So yes, I have it in writing, but I'm also making it easier for my tenants to understand, because I get it. Nobody would sit there and read 61 pages. And although as I am going through that lease up process, right? So when I get a new tenant that's getting ready to move into one of my properties or a property that I manage for my clients, I will have a conversation. I'm not sitting there reading 61 pages verbatim, word for word, because I am aware of every term. I'm aware of every paragraph. I am fully aware of the addendums that I put in that rental lease agreement. I'm just having a conversation. I'm explaining. I'll say, this is paragraph 1. This covers ABC XYZ. The monthly rent is X amount of dollars. The rent is due on the 1st of the month. After the 5th, we will assess a late fee. So when you know what's in writing, you don't have to read it verbatim. You can just talk through it. The tenant should have a copy. Okay, they should have a copy of it. They can follow along, or if you just send it to them in advance, they can read it in advance. Okay, but when you know what's in writing, like I said, just have a conversation. So to make it easier for my tenants, I am now doing video orientations, and I also coach my clients who signed up for my landlord and tenant coaching, my 6-week program that I've created for landlords. I coach my clients how to do that, and it's a whole lot easier than people think. I promise you that when you cover you leave no room for error. Okay, so let me go to my 3rd tip for tenants today. All right, here's the thing. Like I said, a lot of landlords may or may not be knowledgeable about the laws, and what we don't know can and or will hurt us. And landlords can be sued even if they don't know the law. The law doesn't really care that you're a nice person. The law doesn't care if you just recently purchased property or you're recently just getting into the industry and you just didn't know. Too bad, so sad. Please know the law, okay? Information is out there. If you need help, contact somebody who can help you. Because if you violate fair housing laws or any other law, whether it's federal, local, city, or state laws, I promise you that if you violate the law, some tenants, they know the laws better than some owners, housing providers, and landlords do. This is why I share information. I do this every week. I come on at 7:30. I'm on Facebook. I'm on YouTube. I'm sharing information for the entire rental community so that I can help people understand what they can and cannot do on both sides of the aisle, landlords as well as tenants. And so if you rent a home, whether it's an apartment, it could be a townhouse, a single family house, a condo, heck, if you're renting a crack house, it doesn't matter. And you want to protect your belongings, you want to protect yourself rather, know what the law says you can and cannot do. So here's a 3rd tip for tenants. All right. Evaluate your health and determine what's most important to you. I know a lot of people like yourself, Pete, you don't want to get the vaccine. And at one point I was dead set against it, right? I said, I am absolutely not getting this COVID vaccine. I don't know where it came from. I don't know what's in it. How did all of a sudden they come up with a COVID vaccine? They haven't found a cure for cancer. My mom died of cancer when I was 12. I mean, I went through so much. I went up one side, came down the other side of the ladder, why I should not get the vaccine. But because I am in customer service and I work with landlords, I work with tenants, I work with students. The one thing that I don't want to do, and although I'm a fairly active, healthy person, I don't want to be a carrier of the virus and not knowing it and pass it to someone who's not as healthy as I am. That would eat me up. And so I made the decision to get vaccinated because I wanted to do the responsible thing. All right. And so I made the choice to do it. Would I make it a requirement for my tenants? Me personally, I absolutely would not. I would encourage people to consider what's important. If your health is important, if you want to live long, if you care about people that are connected to you or around you, then maybe consider getting a vaccine. Listen, I have people that I love who are near and dear to me. They're saying, listen, I don't care anything about what you said, Karissa. I'm not getting it. And that's their business and that's their right. Okay. It's not my place to decide whether they're right or wrong. But as a tenant, evaluate what's important to you, right? Because here's the thing. Vaccines, it remains the public's best health measure. And that's to protect people from COVID-19. It slows the transmission and it reduces the likelihood of new variants emerging. But again, you can get the vaccine and still get COVID-19. And so if you're like Pete said, listen, you can get it, You can get the vaccine and still get COVID. And while, yes, that is true, it minimizes you dying from the vaccine. All right, so here's the thing that I want people to understand, that there are resources available for COVID-19. Understand that COVID-19 is here. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. All right. So COVID vaccines, they are highly effective. It does prevent severe illness. It does prevent people having to go into the hospital, and it prevents people from dying. If you want more resources about COVID-19, I'm not the expert in that. I am a landlord and tenant expert. Okay. And this is just something that I am so passionate about. I'm passionate about sharing information. However, if you want more information about CDC, if you want more information about landlords being able to make it a requirement, please know that information is available. There are resources available in the community. Go to the CDC website, the Center for Disease Control, and you can also to American Apartment Owners Association website. There you can find more information. Okay, knowledge is power, but when you implement the information and the knowledge, that's what makes it powerful. So I do hope that something I shared today was helpful. Do know that this is real in some states, in some jurisdictions. Landlords can make it a requirement for tenants to get the vaccine. Pete, you said just throwing my name around, I'm going to start charging. Pete, thank you, Pete. You know, I always have to use you. I always have to use you, your input, your feedback, because it's so important, right? I want people to know and understand that, listen, we're all human. Some of us, we share the same values, we share the same beliefs, and then you may find others who absolutely just don't, for whatever reason, and that's their right. That's what makes the world go round, because we're all created uniquely. We're all different. We all have different views and opinions. But here's the thing: know what the law says, know what you can and cannot do, right? Make sure that you understand the law, make sure that it is in writing. And if you have questions, ask questions. If you need help, listen, make a telephone call, reach out to someone who is more knowledgeable than you. Don't think that you can just wing it, because sometimes that's the best thing to do. I've seen a landlord, they get jammed because they thought that they could just make their decision based off of what they believe, and ended up violating the law. Okay, the laws are in place to protect you, whether you're a landlord or whether you're a tenant. So know what you can and cannot do. My time is up. I thank you for yours. So I will entertain any other comments, any other questions that have come in. Thank you for your comment. I see you on YouTube. YouTube is here. Okay. Pastor Moore, thank you so much for a great informative broadcast. It is my pleasure. This is what I do each and every Monday. I'm right here at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm on Facebook. I am on YouTube. Please make sure that you like and subscribe to my social media channels. That way, when I come on to share information, you will be the first to know. Sharing is caring, right? If you need to email me, if you're on YouTube, you already have my email address. But for those of you who do not have my email address and you want to get in contact with me, here's my email address here, karissaspann@gmail.com. YouTube, you've already received an email. Go ahead and email me, Karissa@dchpa.org. There are so many things that we are contending with, whether you're a landlord, whether you are a tenant. I promise that each week that I come on, my only goal is to add value, to share information that will make what you do as a landlord a little bit easier, and to also make sure that tenants are a lot more knowledgeable about what they can and cannot do. So again, my time is up. I thank you for yours. Please make sure you're subscribing. Please tune in each week. Make sure that you like, you tag, and you share this video if you found it helpful today. And again, please make sure that you are following me on social media. Okay, every Monday, 7:30 p.m. Go ahead and set your alarm clock every Monday, I'm bringing something new. I'm bringing something extra, and you want to tune in because this is free information, free 99. But I promise you that if you violate the law, it could cost you thousands of dollars. So show up, get this information each week. If you are interested, in January the 24th is next Landlord and Tenant coaching. That is a group session. I'm currently working one-on-one with landlords, helping them through my 6-week landlord master strategy course that I have created. So many people have found value in it. And so if you thought that this segment was good, I promise you that if you are a landlord, you're new, you're inexperienced, or you feel like you just want some extra one-on-one time, some extra one-on-one help, please inbox me, please email me. I would love to work with you, would love to spend some time helping you to make business even greater. All right, so I'll see you all next Monday at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. Bye for now.